Okay.
Hello friends, welcome back to your Shams Ka Salam आपके नाम in this program. And today we have here one of the very special guests from USA joining us live. So welcome Rose Hollermann here in this program called Shams Ka Salam आपके नाम. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So, friends, those who are not aware about this program is started by Shams Aalam, this is me, and we want to bring a real life story on this program to inspire millions of people across the world. And today we have very special guest, Rosemary Vigu. She is a two-time Paralympian and she has won gold medal in Rio 2016 Paralympic. She was a team member for wheelchair basketball for USA. So we welcome you here. Welcome.
Thank you.
So Rose, we have very few questions to you. So first question I would like to ask you is like, did you as a child aspire to do what you are doing today professionally?
I think like my whole entire I grew up with three older brothers. So I think when you're kind of the youngest of three brothers as a girl, you kind of grow up just being competitive. So I think like definitely when I was younger, I aspired to be an athlete and doing sports and being active. I think it wasn't until probably I actually remember the first time I ever heard of the opportunity to go abroad and play professionally. It was when I was like 12 years old, and it was with my mom and dad, and someone was telling my dad like you should really push her to do this because she would have the ability to. And I think from then on I kind of aspired to go do that and kind of follow that dream. I guess for me it's always been basketball that like I can't remember a time in my life when I wasn't in love with basketball and just following that dream.
Wow, this is amazing. This is amazing. Thanks so much. And so next question I have for you is, you are the epitome of positivity, but are there days when you feel blue?
Yes, of course. I definitely try to stay more on the positive side than on the negative side, but like anyone, I definitely have days where it's hard and I feel blue and down, but I think like I'm a really passionate person, so I feel everything really strong, and I actually think that ends up being a positive for me because I never like push anything down, and I always try to like confront my feelings. And I just also think that growing up in the sports world and sports community, you get a lot of like psychology and sports psych work that you don't get if you're just in everyday life. And I've really found that that is something that like on court it's useful, but it's actually more useful off court, like using meditation techniques and just like calming, like being aware of your personality through personality tests and those sorts of resources that I've had from the USA national team, I think are what I use off court. And I'm a big advocate that meditation is a huge part of like if you use meditation in your life, you're going to be happier and more successful, and you're just going to be aware of yourself more.
Wow, great. Thank you. So, yeah, Rose, so you are such a great inspiration to millions of people, but who is the inspiration for you?
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Yeah, I say you are the inspiration for globally millions of people, but who is the inspiration for you?
um my biggest inspiration, I would say Becca Murray is probably one of the athletes that I look up to the most. She's just always, I've played on national teams with her, but when I was younger, she was like the it girl when I first got into wheelchair basketball. And just the playing on a team with her grew my, like how much I looked up to her just because she's so calm, she's so collected, and she cares so much about her teammates and the people around her. Like she's such a talented athlete that could easily take over any game and scores all the points and could be cocky about it, but she's only there for her teammates. And I just always looked up to that a lot. I think the way she carries herself is really amazing. And then I always say that, like, my parents, I think that they're really amazing and are two people that I look up to a lot and always have my whole life. So just to be as strong as they are, and like they're hardworking, motivated, and awesome.
Yeah, great, great. Absolutely, I can understand. Wheelchair basketball is a team game, and yes, of course, you are learning and you are admiring your athletes, fellow athletes. That's great. So, what do you like to do in your free time?
In my free time, well, we've certainly had a lot of free time recently with COVID going on. So I actually really enjoy crocheting, like making kind of like knitting. So just making things. I like recently started trying to play guitar. I'm not super good at it yet, but I like when I was in Spain, I was kind of more limited to being in my apartment, and that led to just crocheting, painting, doing arts and craftsy kind of things is what I like to do. And
Great.
then now that I'm home, hmm?
Yes, that's absolutely great. As an athlete, you are doing also amazing things. So, my next question to you, Rose, is what you would like to say to the teenagers, young adults who tend to give up at the times?
um, I like, for me, the thing that's always guided me through sports is uh, to just do what you love and be really passionate about it. It doesn't mean that you don't work super, super hard, but you have to make sure that you love this sport first and last. So what you want to do in life is just find what you're passionate about and use that to be your motivation.
That's great. That's great. And I'm talking with you after a long time, around almost 2 years. We had an opportunity to meet you during my GSMP Global Sports Mentoring Program in UTA. And yeah, that was really amazing moment. So few more questions, like Rose, I want to ask you, like, what was the best moment in your childhood memory you remember? One thing, one memory you wanted to share with us.
My childhood and like my childhood memory.
Yes.
Yes. Um, I think we went to the Badlands in Minnesota, or in South Dakota, when I was younger, as a family trip with all of my cousins, and did like had cabins. And I remember even my cousin and I got like little snails in a tiny bucket. So I think like that family trip was really fun. All of us being
Wow.
on a cabin and running around and just together.
So you have been always traveling to across the world for your championships, and now since because of this pandemic is going
Yeah,
on, what do you feel like? What message you wanted to give to the entire world?
um, I think like stay home, kind of stay on the course, and realize that it would like things will get better. It will reach a normal at some point. I think you hear like a lot of negative talk about how long it's going to take, and I just think at some point it'll be back to normal.
Yes, absolutely, Rose. Even I do think that it should get back to normal, and we all athletes should go back to the court, and we play our best games, and we keep rocking and rolling on the ground and court. So we wish you all the best. And one more thing, like before going closing the session, I wanted to ask you, Rose, like. Where do you see yourself in next 10 years?
That's such a hard question. I don't know, because I went to play over in Spain this last year, and I thought that was going to be something that I would do for a year or two and then I would leave. But I've actually found myself to love being in Spain and being around the culture and just being a part of that environment, that I don't know if that's a place I would end up, or if, I mean, eventually I would like to come back to Minnesota and be back at home, but I don't know how long it's going to take me to get there. But I hope in 10 years I'm still playing basketball, hopefully still at a Paralympic level. Other than that, I don't know.
Yeah, we absolutely wish, and we all wanted to see you during the Paralympics Games and winning medal for your country and your people and inspiring all the young athletes. Basically, one more question related to our game. Like generally, how many hours you practice for wheelchair basketball, and what is your best? Who is your best coach according to you?
Sorry, one more time.
Yeah, so I want to ask you, like, who is your best coach for wheelchair basketball, and how many hours you practice in a day?
How many hours do you practice?
Yes.
Is that okay? Oh, the coach question is definitely difficult. I would probably say my coach from UTA, Jason Nelms, is the best coach I've ever had. I think I've had like a lot of really good, I've had a lot of really good people as coaches, which of course, if you're going out to do that role, you're going to be a great individual. But Jason just understands the game more than anyone I've probably ever seen with the sport of wheelchair basketball. He's just so good at understanding everyone's role and pushing people and just kind of getting people to their peak. How many hours? So when things are normal and typical, we're practicing 5 days a week with the team for 2 hours every day. And then also individual skills 3 times a week for 2 hours. And then probably like 2 hours and like an hour to 2 hours in the weight room 5 days a week is the typical. So that's like 13 hours.
Yeah, one more question to you, Rose. How important a customized wheelchair do you feel for wheelchair basketball?
It's, yeah, that's definitely like it's having a good wheelchair is probably the thing that brings you to that next level. Is like wheelchairs like Performax, just that are custom made, light, and made to fit you. It's definitely like the biggest struggle I think in sports like wheelchair basketball is getting people the right equipment, and it's something that I think a lot of organizations are starting to do, trying to find and make sure that like the CAF grant in the US is starting to make it so people in the States can all get custom wheelchairs. But I always say that like my basketball chair is my running shoes, and I like you can't run in shoes that are too big or too small. It just doesn't work. So I think the same thing fits with the basketball chair.
Absolutely, I am agree with you, Rose. Thank you so much for sharing all the valuable tips with us and sharing your story. We wish you all the best and hope to see you soon. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.